I want to thank you all for being here on the 29th Annual City of Chicago Salute to Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., a great tradition begun by the late Mayor Harold Washington. Celebrating Dr. King reminds us that great men and women, through their words and deeds, can command our collective conscience and train our attention on injustices that require urgent action. That is what Dr. King did 50 years ago when he led marches to end racial discrimination in cities across America, including here in Chicago, from civil rights to equal access to housing and ultimately to economic justice and economic rights. Dr. King's life requires us to remember him, to recommit ourselves to his life's work. He called us to confront the truth, no matter how painful and how ugly it is, and to use it as a catalyst for change and for our betterment. And there is a lesson here for all of us, and a hard lesson of the hard truths that face this city. Because we will not be the city we need to be and can be unless we restore trust between our police and our communities and provide opportunities for all Chicagoans who see the future of Chicago and their future together. To deal with the violence that claims lives on our streets, mostly the lives of young African American men, we also have to root out the cancer of police abuse. Because the quest for safe and secure neighborhoods and against violence demands trust between the community and the police. And when there is no trust, there is no safety. We should recognize that most of our police do a difficult and dangerous job, and they do it well, which is why we never hear or read about their answers to the 911 calls. And I have heard in conversations between police and the community leaders, our officers want to rebuild that community trust as well. We have to be honest with ourselves as we confront this challenge head on. Although it will be long and painful, we will be a better city because we confronted the hard truths, did the difficult things to get us to a better place where trust is the foundation of our city. And we will do it by confronting it completely, comprehensively, and constructively. In addition, as adults, we have an obligation to every child in our city to provide them with a good education, which is their real pathway to a brighter future. It is not good enough to grow up without violence. It is essential to grow up with a good education. That is the life mission of many in this room, and the goal we share both as parents and as community leaders and individuals committed to building a better Chicago. What brought so many African Americans to our city during the Great Migration, which we celebrate the centennial, was a search for opportunity. It is what brings people from all parts of the globe to this city, not just to America, but to a city like my grandfather and my father came not only for opportunity for themselves, but the education of their children to a better tomorrow. And the Great Migration, as we celebrate, was a migration to good jobs and a quality education. It was driven by an overwhelming desire to move out of the shadows of oppression into the sunlight of opportunity. We must follow the giant footsteps of Dr. King in the long and difficult march for social and economic justice, and never waver in that journey, no matter how difficult. We must embrace the fundamental principle that every living soul has value and God-given potential. Until we do, we will never live up to our full potential as a city. And for our children to live up to their full potential, we as adults must live up to our responsibility to their future. And nobody, no parent, no public official, no teacher, no principal, no grandmother on a doorstep or doorstoop gets a pass on that responsibility. These are our children, and we owe them a better tomorrow. Our contract, our commitment as community leaders, as parents, these are the children of Chicago. And when they see this city, we will be the city we can be. When they look upon the buildings of this great city and what it represents, the energy, the power, the strength, the optimism, if a child in Woodlawn, Englewood, Roseland, back of the yards, and any part of this city looks upon those buildings and they see their future, we're going to be a great city. If they think it's another part of the city that they will never see, we will fall short of what Chicago can be and should be. Every day for the next 3 years, I ask you to be determined, to be judged not by words alone, as I will say of myself, but by the actions and the impact they will have on the lives of our fellow citizens. My goal is to ensure that Chicago and every Chicagoan has a chance for a better and stronger future. I ask for your assistance in that mission, from our sanctuaries to our streets to our schools. With us this morning is someone who has always been generous to me and countless others in this room with his friendship and his prayers. The Reverend Dr. Herbert Martin was born in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, near Clarksdale. Did I say that correctly? Or close enough? 22 miles. Okay, 22 miles south. His father was a sharecropper. Reverend Martin grew up during the Civil Rights Movement, suffered violence at the hands of racists. Despite the dangers, he joined Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and the NAACP. Ordained a Methodist minister, Reverend Martin came to Chicago and spent the first 20 years of his career at 2 churches, one on the west side, one on the south side, bridging many divides just doing that. In 1981, he accepted the call and a tall order to become the senior pastor at the Progressive Community Center, the People's Church, where he still serves today, nearly 35 years later. I think those are the grandchildren right there. I have been to that church many times, frequently with Alderman Pat Dowell, to deliver meals around the holidays. And I can tell you that it's far more than just a place for Sunday morning worship. It is an active and vibrant center for the entire neighborhood. But Reverend Martin's service has extended far beyond the church walls. He has been a true servant of our city for decades. He served on the board of directors of the Chicago Housing Authority, including 2 years as chairman, where he fought for the rights of the residents of public housing. In response to a drug war at Robert Taylor Homes, Reverend Martin introduced Operation Safe Passage, recruiting young men from the community to escort children to nearby elementary schools. And today, nearly 100,000 children receive similar support from residents on their way to and from school, and it too is known as Safe Passage, just like the original that Reverend Martin originated here in Chicago. For years, Reverend Martin has been a leader in promoting interfaith cooperation in our city to remind us that we are all children of God and that far more unites us than divides us. We also remember that Reverend Martin was the personal minister and spiritual guide to Harold Washington, who was a member of his church. I tease him often. He's the only person in the city of Chicago who has been minister to 2 mayors, Mayor Washington and Mayor Emanuel. Many of us will never forget Reverend Martin's moving eulogy for the late Mayor Harold Washington. For all his good works, for his years of service to his church, for his years of service to the community around his church, and to his years of service to the city and the people that call Chicago home. It is my honor to bestow upon Reverend Martin this Champion of Freedom Award.